You're listening to The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and related gaming, and the Irish gaming scene, so you don't have to.
Welcome to the party. I'm Shane.
I'm On.
And I'm still Savage.
Somehow, despite all of the surgery.
Well, you can't reassign greatness. We are joined again this week with two very special guests. We have Colin and Baz. Colin Sheppard and Baz Eager. Two well-known luminaries of wargaming, CCGing, but they always remained sort of committed amateurs. They never decided to go the professional route, did you guys?
Yeah, and that was entirely my own personal decision to not turn pro, and had nothing to do with lack of skill.
Yeah, it's actually a common enough thing in Ireland over here. A lot of the major sports fixtures, it's constantly amateur level. They don't really feel it's appropriate to go competitive.
Spicy takes. We're going to talk this week about competitive play and all the different sort of ways that either companies decide to jump into competitive play, or what it's like for players who decide to pursue a life playing their games for hard cash money. Oh, and you've competitively played this and that, haven't you?
Yeah, never at a professional level, because there's a tiny amount of games you can go pro in. It's Magic, and then you're into computer games after that, really, in the esports leagues. But that's you can go pro in Magic, and I never really liked Magic that much. You can go back and look at the originals of organized play, which is basically a tool that eventually people figured out this is a way to get people to commit to your game. Because a lot of the times the problem is not one of the quality of game, it's how much time players have available to play the game. And getting people to consider that time a good investment to spend playing the game, and thus encouraging other people to play the game. Like, you can go back and look at some of the first tournaments in gaming were to do with running like Tomb of Horrors and stuff, actually playing D&D. And that went on for a while. And then Magic came along and became this venture for competitive players that funneled into it. WotC saw an opportunity, created a pro format, and whisked people into that, and made millions on the backs of sweaty tryhards who really wanted to be pro players and be a Magic pro and make their money playing Magic.
There's a reason why the good cards cost $50, $60, $100. It's because people
they win tournaments.
Yeah.
And those tournaments have big old cash prizes.
Someone wins a card with a rare deck, or someone wins a tournament with a new deck with a bunch of cards no one was buying. Price of those cards go up, and it's a key. Like, one of the things about Magic is people could justify spending a lot of money on Magic for two reasons: A, I could go pro, and B, when I want to get out, I can sell my cards for most of their value.
And one of the flip sides of that is when you've got a decent competitive scene, as an amateur, you can rock up. There could be people to play. There will always be people to play.
And that's a key thing, is the idea that people invest time in the game, so they keep playing the game. Otherwise, that time was wasted. I lost that time. I must pursue my sunk cost fallacy. I must keep going. Yeah. And then there's always players there, so people keep playing your game, and your game becomes self-sustaining to an extent. So there's always demand there for the game. Some of the best board games ever have been published in the last few years. I do not know if they're still going to exist 4 or 5 years down the line. The top 0.5%, 1/4% will stay in print. There will be great board games that will come out, people will play. That was a great game. They'll play it 10 times maybe, then they'll put it away, they'll play some new games, and that game will be forgotten.
Oh, greatness will not dictate whether they stay in print. Just go to your local toy store and look at all the Monopoly.
Yep.
Where do we find competitive play in the gaming sphere? I'm going to throw to Colin here. Like, what are the past and present? What are those nodes, those lynch point games that have led to serious competitive play, off the top of your head?
Well, within the kind of wider gaming sphere, there are a couple of sub-genres and sub-mechanical sets that suit competitive play much better than others. Very few people these days are playing competitive tabletop role-playing games. But card games in particular, collectible card games, Magic being the big one, and war games. those are both areas of the wider gaming scene that have very, very big, important, and healthy competitive scenes where players are doing their, there's no collaboration going on those tables. They're not getting together to tell a shared story. They're out there to just crush the other guy.
I think it's interesting because, as Owen mentioned and he touched on, there was once upon a time a sort of a trouser leg of history where competitive role playing or tournament level role playing happened, and I've some thoughts on that we'll delve into later. I think it's fascinating, but hard to balance, and that's really one of the key things for competitive play. You need to have a level playing field, or at least one that is being teeter-tottered sufficiently to keep everyone guessing.
We never built that GM android to GM all the games equally.
You've been awarded -7 role play points.
Whatever, just that was the bit. I think that was the death knell of competitive RPGs. I think it was the GM was the problem.
The lack of our GM technology is not sufficiently advanced.
You couldn't get exactly the same output every time. If I play, these games, it's me and the other player. Whereas you've got a player there's a referee nearly, and you need exactly the same quality.
Yeah,
referee.
but I think you even just run into a kind of a conceptual difficulty there. As soon as you're trying to win at an RPG, you've really kind of morphed it into a tabletop skirmish or board game or something like that.
It goes that route, yeah.
So
skirmish games, actually, we talked about that recently, and is that a place where we can see competitive play happening?
Oh, absolutely, and it definitely does. But part of what you kind of got to consider is it competitive play we're talking about, or are we talking about incentives? Are we talking about trying to get people to play? Because when we're talking about role-playing events where players get together and sit down, those are games being played, and that's what the company wants. The company wants to sell you those books, absolutely. Right. But if no one plays the game, no one's going to buy the next book. So one of the key parts of these competitive events, so yeah, definitely with the skirmish events, and GW do a lot of different packs that go out to the stores to get these events going, and they don't really mind how it's run. If it's like a weekly event or if it's one big one on a weekend, that's fine, as long as people are playing. So they're not investing in it to give you the top tier competitive event where players are going to be luminaries of the particular sport, as it were. They just want people to play, and that's I think is the key point here. The competitive element from players is different than from companies. The companies want people to play, and that's their primary motivation.
So what do companies do to get people playing their game competitively? How do they make it happen?
Organised play leagues, I suppose.
Organised play and competitive play are slightly different, but organised play will focus on providing incentives or rewards to continuing to show up and play, often at a pre-established venue. The ideal situation for a lot of games is that you rock down to your local store on whatever night of the week it is, you play some games, so that everybody knows, hey, if I buy this set of cards, if I buy this rulebook, if I buy this set of minis, I can rock up there on weeknight, weekend, between this time, and I will definitely get a game. Because we've all had games we bought that we dearly love that nobody plays.
Yeah, and
you can't get it.
I can see that being really important. It means that if I have just dropped 30, 40, 50 quid on a book, knowing that, well, I know next Wednesday is the game night for that system, it means I can definitely get some value out of this. Yeah. It's not just going to be a read and then sit on my shelf. And, buying books to just read is fine too, but when you drop 50 quid on a book for a game,
you're buying a textbook.
There's
not buying a hardback.
There's an assumption there that you're going to want to actually play some of the game.
I mean, I think that's why it's become so important for gaming companies, particularly in a fragmented environment, to go, okay, don't worry, we're going to support this with OP. And if you look at Kickstarter, there are a million games launched, which aren't the ones that aren't board games, will all launch. Oh no, don't worry, we're going to have an aggressive OP program that will make sure that there is regular gaming
ongoing
nights about this. Organised play. Yeah, and basically
ongoing purchases.
Yeah, basically. So people know, okay, if I throw my 50 or my 100 or my 200 in here, I'm definitely going to get a couple of weeks worth of gaming out of it, or maybe I'm going to get a year's worth of gaming. Because you got to fool yourself. You got to think, no, I'm going to play this forever. You got to. Because if you're dropping €300-400 on getting into something,
These numbers are accelerating.
Well, that's what
Depends what game you're getting into.
Like
Yeah,
if you're trying to talk yourself into playing 40k
Yeah.
tournament level, I've got to talk myself into, okay, I'm not just going to buy these and paint them. I'm going to play in the tournaments and I'm going to do well because I'm a good player, and you've got to talk yourself into it. And initially, yeah, they want you to spend €30, but they want you to spend 400 or 500 if you can.
If you want to play competitive Warhammer 40,000, you're looking at minimum probably 400, probably more like 600 to get your competitive list assembled and built. And that's before you even pay for transporting the damn thing to the tournament.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, the most
Super
competitive list just came out this month. Not last month, this month. So you need to get cracking on those paintings.
That's right. We think the Blood Bowl World Cup happened recently. There's
Is it 1,200 players?
14, I believe.
1,400.
Yeah, look at that.
Varied reports on how the tournament went, but it does indicate that even a niche game like Blood Bowl can pull in.
Well, that's a
Should
great
have hired
example.
a couple
Now-
of pro TOs, I'll tell you
Well,
right that.
I think there's an important point to make there is that the NAF Blood Bowl World Cup, which happened recently in Austria, 1,400 people turned up, nearly 1,500, I think.
Yeah.
That was not run by Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And those are independent people who drive the love of that game. And this is not the first time that event has run. It does run every 4 years in classic World Cup fashion, but it's an independent thing, and it's they encourage your third party models, which Games Workshop would frown heavily on.
Show off your-
They might wag a finger quite
Your
sternly
team of
at you.
battle nuns or toads or whatever it is.
But yeah, so that's while that was definitely a huge, big, organized event. It had some problems this year, but they kind of sorted a lot of it out as they went along. But that was not run or organized or even kind of signed off on by Games Workshop. If you went onto GW's own site, there would have been zero mention of it.
Which is crazy to me. If you had a 1,400 player tournament, I'd be like,
Oh, yeah.
I'd have a banner.
Lavish
stitched up for
surprise
this,
support,
Possibly
yeah.
with mission accomplished on it.
And like Blood Bowl, Blood Bowl is a fantastic example as well, because that's a game that they released and then stopped supporting for over a decade. But that game kept going because you had the fan base
Yep.
that was supporting it, that was updating the rules, that was
And had
publishing
league play
stuff.
sort of built in as
Yeah.
just even part of the theme of the game.
So
It's a
people were
game of
still
fantasy football.
people were still playing it, and like an additional kind of aspect to that was, if you looked around, you would see that people were playing it. You could hear about people playing it online. People were still talking about it. There were websites and forums they could go to and chat about it. So the community was still driving this idea that if you bought into this game, if you could find the miniatures, if you bought into this game, there are games out there. There are people out there. You will be able to get a
There's
game.
leagues to play.
We're starting a league, guys, who wants in. And that's a potent thing, the thought of, ooh, I can commit and get excited to this, and I know I'll get my games. I won't commit and get excited to this and then find out nobody plays Gaslands. You're like, we're pushing matchbook cars around the post-apocalyptic. There's no one to play with me.
What's not to like?
You know?
And tangentially with that, like, one of the real draws of Games Workshop for me is, like, I still can play with my models from 20 years ago, and when I buy models today, I'm expecting those models to still be there in 20 years because people play those games. And when I buy, I want to know that I'll get to play, even if I'm just deluding myself.
Yeah. I've got fabulous games that nobody ever played with me. Like, that's what it comes down to, because there was never any organised play for it. Like, I love the Transformers TCG that's coming out. Nobody plays it.
You have like 95% of the games ever published, though.
No, I do not. As I've said, 2,000 to
Wish upon
4,000
a star.
board games coming out a year. When I read the top 10 board games of the year list, if I recognise 2 or 3 of them, I'm shocked. It's ridiculous. It's unsustainable at the moment.
It's only the very, very few then that have a game that supports competitive play, a
Yeah.
company that would support a competitive scene, and then a player base that is large enough to drive competitive play. So which in a sort of a Fermi's paradox kind of way illustrates why there's so few that do break above those thresholds. Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh being obvious examples, then Blood Bowl being one. I'm struggling to think of another board game that has a big competitive scene. Diplomacy probably counts.
Dominion had one for a while.
Dominion did for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised the games that do. There are some weird ones that would be unexpected. Like I was told how big the pandemic scene was, that people were playing
For
competitive.
organised, how you
Yeah.
play Pandemic competitively?
They had specific scenarios
Time.
set up, and
so
it was
that'd be
like
alright, yeah.
those.
Speedrun?
Essentially, I think it was how fast could you get through? How many millions of people could you not kill. I don't know, whatever perspective.
That's like those are interesting metrics to use for competitive play. If you consider rally as a sort of a side as an example, like it's all about beating the clock rather than beating other competitors on the same field. So I think that would broaden the scope of games you could explore.
Yeah, so those are competitive or cooperative teams competing against other teams to beat.
I've been shocked, despite the fact we're in the golden age of board games, no one's managed to string together a board game tournament or anything like that.
As in some sort of board game triathlon where you play
whatever, just like a big board game. This is the competitive board game event. We're all playing the stuff, and no one's managed to do it because it's so fragmented in terms of what would you run. You'd be end up
what
going.
Rule sets are popular enough.
Well, what board games
competitors-
popular enough to put together a team to do stuff, and no one's done it. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy, but there you go.
But part of it is that, as I think we're saying, these events aren't really there to be the be-all and end-all. Like, we're not trying to prove who's the best at any of these games. Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive interest in these games.
Exposure.
Yeah, and like encourage people to play these games and buy these games is what the companies are doing. So these are games that I want to play at home.
Yeah.
Even if knowing that there's store events that I can go to are a big sell.
The vast majority of players in an organised play thing don't actually want to win necessarily. They just want to have a few good games, get a few good moments out of it, play something against the world. There are a percentage, the top bit, and then a bunch of the bottom just under them who didn't actually have a chance but are nearly there.
Don't realize it yet.
Yeah, they're there, and they're there to kind of play really hard. And actually, that bit on the top is usually the bit that you make a lot of your money on.
They're the whales, as it were, that the guys who are
Often
in the
people
life.
who will spend a lot of money trying to be competitive at a game where they think they can throw some money at this, I can be better, I can have more options.
I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
And that's only for a particular style of game. Like there are some game models where that doesn't suit.
No.
True.
But
of course, it does occur. Sorry. Go.
it's for me the big part is you really want to support the 50% at the bottom.
Yes.
Like the bad players. When we're talking about competitive, like, yeah, giving a nice prize to whoever wins, that's great. But really you want all of the people who lost horribly to feel good about it. To go, I had a great time. I didn't win a bunch of games, but there was a great community. It felt great. I got great prizes. I'll be back next time.
Maybe a participation sort of special event card, or
It's very
we saw
important.
that. Actually, Colin, you mentioned Dominion, and that did have a bunch of cards that you could only get originally from competing in certain events. And you sort of, I mean, there's other games that do it. I think Carcassonne, when they do special meeples for certain events, things like that. So that's one of those things. That Prestige, I think, was another thing Colin mentioned about why companies would create competitive scenes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
having that card to be able to say, I was there, didn't do very well, but I got this proof I was there.
Yeah.
Well, I think the prestige driver there, you do need to look at how is the company trying to turn this organized or competitive scene into money. You know, that is how the company is going to operate. And if they're not operating like that, they're going to fall down in a heap and that game is going to die. Yeah. I think Magic the Gathering is being one of the biggest competitive games within the sphere of gaming, probably the biggest. It's a great example, and there are professional Magic players. Magic is one of the few games you can play that you can actually just make money on. You can make a living on. But that's a very tiny percentage of the player base. And the goal there for Wizards is not... Like, they're not making money out of the guy who wins the World Championship.
No, they're giving him prize money.
They're giving him prize money. They're flying him to wherever it is. And along the way, he has won in prize support all of the cards he was going to need. It's not like he's buying product. But the prestige, the pomp and ceremony, the kind of excitement of here is a world championship, here are the very, very best of a very, very large player base, just drives up interest. It accelerates all of the lesser competitive scenes, all of the Friday Night Magics. Yeah. Everybody wants to go along to Friday Night Magic to try out their copy or their version of the deck that won the World Championship last year or last season or whatever. And it's so they are prestige projects that the payoff is then at the lower player base. And when I say lower, I mean just sort of in the tournament scale. Those are the guys who are never going to get to Worlds, who will maybe scrabble to get to a Nationals or try and place well at a Pro Tour qualifier, maybe even get to a Pro Tour event.
Right.
That's where they're making their money as a return on investment of the running of this enormously expensive system.
Yeah, well, they do need a big venue. There's a lot of promotion, and now in the age of streaming, presumably they've got to think about how they're broadcasting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the sort of thing. Even today, folks, you'd be surprised to hear that ESPN are not really running to broadcast Magic events. But Colin's going to tell me something.
Well,
else.
Magic has been broadcast on ESPN.
It has, but it has.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still doing it.
Don't know. Well, I think it's
on
found.
ESPN channel and the Dolphins.
Right down, all the way down to the Ocho.
Yeah,
do you think?
that's
But my point being, I suppose, that it has found a natural home. Like competitive gaming has found a natural home on streaming services like Twitch.
Yeah.
And that's a place I've noticed that, again, you're going to create games that are going to appeal to, are going to work with that format. And while competitive gaming, we've already talked about how competitive role playing may not really be a thing anymore. I wonder, given that you can stream now, given that you can jump between tables and have a few broadcasters who might keep an eye on things, is that a place that you could?
Well,
I have seen
build-
attempts. There have been attempts to make a kind of pay-per-view style D&D tournament, or fun scenario with a bunch of streamers from other channels coming up with their characters and playing around. There was one interesting one where I think it was like 5 or 6 minor RPG podcasters got together and brought out 10th level characters, and then the Trask showed up, and there was a system of people actually kind of donating to the stream would give them inspiration dice.
This reminds me of the days of yore when you would sort of send gladiators into the arena and sort of throw favour or disfavour from the crowd.
Yeah,
not competitive as such, but
Yeah, it's sort of a
performative anyway.
yes.
The streaming like that's really interesting because it's a way a lot of different companies are trying to branch in and go, wow, this is the way to actually promote our game to get people buying it. Like D&D's been ridiculously successful, almost completely by accident. At the rise of streaming, just coincided with Fifth Ed coming out, and a couple of industry leaders effectively switched to Fifth Ed, and what happened as a result of that was a bunch of other people started going. So you will see there are hundreds, and I mean literally hundreds, of RPG streams across almost every system of people going, but we could be the next Critical Role and make piles of money. And people are trying to effectively go pro this way. Outside of a system put in place by the company.
True.
To just go but we could generate so much money and then we could transfer it into money through doing a Kickstarter for something. And
the competition there is the popularity contest.
oh look, there will be 2 or 3 success stories like Critical Role, and everybody else is going to fail horribly because that's how it works.
But these are like kind of perfect example of what I'm talking about, incentives. So these are people that you can sit down and you can watch that are playing. So you're like, wow, okay, these people play, and look at all the followers they have. There must be a lot of interest in this game. I'll go out and I'll get this game. It looks like it's fun. Similar when they're doing the competitive events. People are playing it, you get interest in it. It's all marketing. Like, it's all ways to encourage you to buy these games, to tell you that these games are good, or fun, or exciting.
And
they're just different
playing them.
aspects.
Look, everyone's playing them. So
Yeah.
why aren't you playing them?
But some, there's sort of always going to be this mix of fans doing it on their own initiative, and well, we just love this. We would like to show you how this thing we love, versus the company itself is going, here's our sponsored content. We stream in these days. We these are the lavish prizes we give to our players.
I mean,
where's the balance between those?
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense. Why would 5 people sit in a room and stream media out to the world talking about games, telling you should play these games, these are fun and exciting games, but not be sponsored by the company? It doesn't make any sense.
Any potential sponsors out there, I'm particularly interested in whiskey, cigars, other gaming accessories of that sort of nature.
I think in the end, the real winners of this war are going to be the microphone sellers. But
They haven't seen any money out of us for a while.
no, never.
So I want to go back to the Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah,
'Cause I think this is a
absolutely.
fascinating element
Absolutely.
of D&D's history, where someone said, right, Gary Gygax, yes, you, write us a competitive scenario so that we can run tables and tables of people through it and come up with a winner, and then we'll give them a prize.
It was.
And we'll let you go back to sleep.
Well, he was an awful lot of medication at the time.
And he did. He wrote the Tomb of Horrors, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, but it's this crushingly sort of vicious dungeon run.
My understanding is the only way to win is not to play.
Oh,
No, it's fine.
but, well,
No, it genuinely is. It's very manageable if you're vaguely sensible. And I've had several years worth of cultural osmosis where some of the stuff has trickled out. Wait a minute, I know this sort of trap. And
but the
And you
problem
hire
is-
some expendable guys to
Yeah,
walk in front of you.
absolutely.
It's
So
very
the
important.
problem is, Gary got kind of wily with it, and he wrote this tiered adventure where a whole bunch of the tables came through it, popped out the other side, went, that wasn't so bad. And the adjudicators went, you only reached tier 1 of the adventure.
Yeah.
You can go over to the runners-up bench there. You can sit down. You can watch the rest of these people continue playing. And then there was another tier of the dungeon where you've discovered that there's another secret behind here. I'll go in here.
Yeah.
And those players are like, well, you did well. You posted some good numbers there, but you didn't win. And then there was the last tier of the dungeon, which was just insanely sort of cryptic. You can go and watch or read all sorts of teardowns of how Two Horrors really works, but you kind of, those were the top tier players who actually stood a chance of winning, and one of those tables came out on top. Now, that's grand. That's sort of how competition should work. The idea that there was actual bits of this competition that were hidden from the players as they played, that's an interesting thing in and of itself. However, then some bright spark goes, that was a really good competition we ran. That was good. We should do something else next year. And Gary was like, no, I'm going back to sleep. So they went, well, why don't we just publish it? And we'll stick a book together and we'll put it out, and GMs can run it for their players. That's a good idea, right? And I want to just, let's reflect for a moment on how insane that is.
Yeah,
Like, given
that
that
sounds
Two
ridiculous.
Horrors has now become,
I mean,
one
I
of
assume
those-
it never sold. I mean, that's a horrible thing to play through,
everybody
right?
bought it, and the GM sat down and read it and went, oh, okay, right, so run them through this, and they'll pop it the other side, and they'll think they've run through the Tomb of Horrors. Or they'll get canny and find the next level. Or they'll get really canny and half of them will be dead or on their 5th character. And maybe we'll get to the actual end of this.
But it's
a
telling
horrible...
that almost no adventure follows that format.
No, but it's a horrible adventure to actually
Yeah.
put in front of a bunch of people who aren't playing competitively.
Is this reflective of masochism in the gaming community more than anything else?
No, you
it's
don't see that
reflective-
anymore.
It's reflective of difficulty in presenting a challenge rather than experience. Like, if what you're doing there is a lot of RPG scenarios, almost all of them are pitched as an experience rather than a challenge.
Yes, that's true.
Right? So, how many... we spent some time thinking about this. How do you run an RPG where failure is expected unless you do very well? Like, you go, okay, you try this, you failed, right, start again. Very few RPGs do it as let's do multiple runs of this, because it's going to take us multiple runs to figure out how to do it.
Paranoia?
Paranoia, maybe, but like some games will have some sort of respawn or replay mechanic. But
Clips phase.
like,
But I don't necessarily think it's a good format for a game for tabletop RPG. I think it's great for like computer game perhaps, but the sheer time investment.
That's-
if I'm going to
that's the problem
spend
for it.
like 9 weeks at 3 hours per week at my regular gaming and get to a point, it's like, oh, you all died. We go back to the start.
Dun, dun,
Yeah, you have to have a,
No, we
you have to have a
don't.
much lighter.
but a lot of board
Much lighter
games run
loop.
like that. Like, there's a challenge, and you're like, okay, we're going to wipe. Let's start again. Okay, because a couple of Gloomhaven ones, I went, okay, well, we're dead. Let's start again.
Start again.
And
Sure.
it's
Reset.
and it's just, that's a slice of RPG stuff that didn't translate well and got more or less discarded. It's there,
It
but
is,
it
yeah.
kind of pushed into board games and other stuff instead of or MMOs. Get out of it.
It
You
would be
don't want
interesting to see, it's another topic, but it would be interesting to see an RPG system that supported that idea that you're probably going to restart every 40 minutes and do that 3 or 4
You
times
have
in
to
a
do
session.
something that's quite mechanically savvy and quite quick to tear down and reset. And that's the
Eclipse phase potentially
Yeah,
has the setup
it
of a
does.
game that you could kill everybody and start again.
I would custom design an RPG.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Which
maybe
definitely
then
did.
it could be competitive if it was tight enough
Well,
mechanically.
roll it back. I like looking at the Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about how it's competitive, I
And it was initially written to be competitive, and then
Absolutely.
started being run as a narrative, which is
Absolutely.
nonsense.
The second thing to note on it is the recognition. Everyone knows about it.
I know
Yeah.
that's the thing that kills me.
And the kind of media exposure for it is out there. And I think for me the big thing about that is, if I go to you, all right, we're going to run Tomb Horrors, are you in? If I've bought that
Actually,
book, if I've bought that book, I know people will be interested in it because people have played this again and again over all these years. People know about it. It's a game that people are interested in. And I know they're interested in because they talk about it on podcasts. They talk about it on streaming. Like, it's out there. It's in the zeitgeist. There could be, or there almost certainly are much better campaigns that I could get instead that people won't have that brand recognition for. They won't see it because it hasn't been sold, hasn't been marketed in the same way. So they maybe won't be interested.
And no RPG is played under time pressure anymore, or almost none.
Well, there's always the time pressure of the last bus at 10:30.
But you have another session next week.
Yeah.
The only time RPGs are played under clock now, in my experience, are at conventions. Where it's like, no, guys, you got to finish up. You were supposed to finish up half an hour ago, and your RPG coordinator is chewing his teeth. Get out!
Who are the real winners there?
Wrap it up.
Okay, so on this, in terms of wrapping it up, competitive play. There's been some great games that have competitive play and the success of these games really go hand in hand. And then there's been some attempts, and I think there'll continue to be attempts to produce games that work in a competitive scene. I think oftentimes a lot of games fall down because they try and be two things, or maybe more than one thing, or they don't really focus properly. But any other thoughts on competitive play?
It's an incredibly valuable marketing tool to assure players you will get some value out of this game. It's incredibly useful for a company to know we've got life still in this line, we can keep releasing stuff for this line, people will keep playing. It's so valuable for letting people know that they will get to play it and building confidence in the existence of the game line.
Yeah, and I think it's a real challenge for companies to properly allocate and resource like an organized play element, whether that's part of their marketing or whether it's part of the competitive scene, because that part of the business is just going to lose money for them, at least on paper. But what's actually happening is it's driving sales. So I think companies need to stop thinking of their organized play as they get 10% off whatever it costs them to run the event. Instead, they need to start thinking of it as part of their marketing arm and as a way to get the word out that you buy this game, you'll be able to play this game.
Yeah, because I think it can be more difficult and more expensive than anybody expects, and requires an awful lot to do it right, because you can run a tournament or a competition format, and if you do it wrong, you just end up annoying people. And if you do it really, really wrong, you'll drive people away from your product. They'll be like, I wanted to play this competitive style of game, but you're doing it so badly, and those guys over there are doing it so well, I'm just going to jump ship.
You also have to balance that you're adding to the fan enthusiasm of something as opposed to stepping on it. Like, if you you have to support fan tournaments, or at least not crush them. You have to driving up your own engagement, but also make sure that I'm sure if they really wanted to, Games Workshop could shut down this whole Blood Bowl World Cup business, but instead they decided that the best option is to not advertise it and let it just exist in a different quantum
The
reality.
game police, Shane. Can't stop you playing.
Aren't they?
I don't know this.
Aren't
I
they?
know, but
Went after Space Marine
The
there
big
not so long
trick
ago.
is, if you don't have an organised play, you're relying on local influencers and tastemakers to generate your community for you. If you don't run your own community, somebody else is going to run it for you.
And that's a crap
and you
shot.
may not want those people to, because there's been games which have been destroyed by a toxic person being the influencer or chief. This is how we play the game.
Yeah.
This is the rules we play the game under.
If you're not going to do it, someone will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no one will, and then your game fails.
There, in any competitive scene, there are winners and losers. This week, dear listener, to this point, I think you'll have to agree that ultimately it is you that have won. Now, if you'd like to award some accolades, we're eager to hear from you on Facebook, Twitter. You can email us directly. Check the show notes for all the other places we pop up. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there or on Twitter through @adventuringpty. The hosts can be contacted by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike, version 3 license.
Where my brain goes is like the idea of people getting together to game, and the idea of the convention as the sort of war game, and that brings back the fragmentation part that you were talking
It's actually a little bit about companies trying to get people to game. And rather than people coming together to game, it's about companies trying to influence people into playing their game.
Yeah.
So we're doing a bit of
Continue
this is a
to
bit of
play it.
industry talk.
It's a little industry, it's a little how it
Nothing wrong
actually,
with it.
it's a
Yeah.
little how their theory encounters reality.
And I think because the exposure prestige angle does get us to talking about how this stuff is covered. Like, so if you do decide, oh, I'm going to be a competitive game, that's the kind of company we are, then you have to start exploring, well, okay, so what are you doing? I mean, are you going to get it on ESPN Ocho? Or is it a Twitch thing? Or are you
Yeah,
gonna
and
set it
weirdly,
on
like
streaming?
that prestige thing we were talking about with like top Magic players, that has changed. Now the real prestige is being on a Twitch streamer where people, you don't even have to be great at whatever game it is. You just have to churn out content, be good quality content,
Yeah,
understand what you're talking
And
about.
part of that is some of the guys have found that they can make more money if you win your big world tournament and become a big name. You're going to make more money by not going to any more tournaments. You jump onto Twitch, you stream, and you'll make a lot more money that way.
Coaching?
Yeah, that's a side maybe, but
All right, so
Yeah.
let's put that stuff in the can, 'cause that's great.
sure.
That's where we want to go. So we're going to do 10 seconds, and you going to kick us in?
Sure.
Did I kick anyone in this week? I did the first one, didn't I?
Yeah, you did the first one. Then no one, I guess,
I
it's
think
me
so,
now.
yeah. Okay, so 10 seconds, and then Shane, you're going to take us in.